what are the pros and cons of moving to Camas, Washington in 2025? Hey, welcome back to Living in Vancouver and Camas, Washington YouTube channel. I'm your host, Hannah Dubyne, and I'm so excited you're here today because we're talking about my favorite city in Clark County, Washington, Camas. If you guys have been watching our channel for a while, you know that we specialize in all things Camas, Washington, and we love sharing about this amazing city. We thought it was time for an updated video on pros and cons of Camas. I've made this video multiple times, but hey, it's 2025 and things change. By the way, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to sign up for Weekend Happenings with Hannah, our amazing email that we put out about local events. We handwrite it every single week just for you guys, and we promise we won't spam you. And subscribe to the channel because we put out new videos every single week. All right, let's talk pros and cons. I'm gonna start first with the pros because that's fun, and then we're gonna move into the cons. And by the way, this isn't an exhaustive list, so if there's things you wanna add, feel free to put them down below in the comments. We're trying to keep this video reasonable length and hit on the most important things. My first pro I wanna share with you for moving to Camas, Washington is the amazing nature, trails, and just scenery here. The Pacific Northwest is known for beautiful nature, and Camas is no exception. We have our very own lake, Camas Lake, and Round Lake as well, and they have trails all around them. We have tons of protected green space in Camas and tons of little trails. Not everyone knows this, even people who live in Camas, but almost every neighborhood in Camas is gonna have some sort of trail or breezeway in it. It's part of the city's development plan, and they all kind of interconnect in a way. We love to walk, run, and bike these trails personally, and I know a lot of you guys do as well. So if you're big nature lovers, Camas is a great spot. Also, when you're up on Prune Hill, you get these incredible views. We love taking our e-bikes and just seeing all the different little pockets where you can see Mount Hood, and you can see Mount St. Helens, and you can see the river, and you can see Grass Valley. It's truly just absolutely phenomenal. The second huge pro of moving to Camas, Washington, and I feel like this one is so underrated, is how close you are to everything, but you're also still in the quiet, peaceful suburbs. I have a lot of friends, and we have a lot of clients that move from places like Arizona and Texas, where the urban sprawl is crazy, and you could have to drive 20 or 30 minutes, or maybe even more, just to get to some sort of civilization, and that's absolutely not the case with Camas. You're just minutes away from either East Vancouver, Washougal, the 14, whatever it is you need to do for shopping, involvement, kids' sports, activities, it's all really close by. But when you're in Camas, you see tons of trees, you experience those trails, you get to experience the serenity of the lake. It's really the perfect balance. My third pro for 2025 moving to Camas, Washington is that it's very family friendly, but it's also inclusive of all types of individuals and families. Couples with children particularly love Camas because it has a very strong school system, which is another one of my pros for you guys. And it has a very high community involvement rate. And so naturally it just kind of attracts folks that have kids of all ages, young kids, middle schoolers, high schoolers. But we also have plenty of clients in Camas who, don't have kids, they don't plan to have kids, maybe they're retired, maybe they're single individuals, and they still feel like they find their place here. My fourth big pro for you is that we have very minimal traffic in Camas. In the city of Camas itself, it's a smaller town. It's about 25-ish thousand in population, getting probably closer to 30 at this point. So we don't have any freeways or highways really in town besides SR 14. Really, the only time we're gonna hit traffic is if there's road work or an accident. Other than that, traffic is very minimal. Of course, if you commute over to Portland, yes, you are gonna hit some of that traffic, but I'd recommend you just try and stay in Clark County. Next big pro for you is no state income tax. That one probably does not come as a surprise to you if you're thinking about moving to Camas. This goes for anywhere in Washington state, so you could move anywhere in the state and have this benefit. But it really does feel so luxurious to live in such a beautiful city such as Camas and not have to pay a state income tax. We have a whole video up on taxes in the state of Washington. It's a couple years old now, still pretty relevant, so feel free to go check that out and learn more about all the taxes in Washington state. The next huge pro of moving Camas, Washington is that it's a politically moderate area. This is a pretty 50-50 split city in terms of blue versus red politics, and I feel like, and I think a lot of residents too, that we get along well despite our differences. Of course, some of you may want to live in an area that leans one way or the other strongly towards your beliefs, but I think living in a split area really makes you a better community member and a better person. The next pro for you of living in Camas, Washington in 2025 is the high school rankings and sports. This is one of the top reasons why families love living in Camas, because they know that their children are going to get a great education. Camas has just one school district, the Camas School District. It's probably always going to stay as one school district, and it is very highly sought after. There are a handful of elementary schools. I can't remember how many off the top of my head. There's 2 main middle schools, and then there's 1 main high school that everyone feeds into. That makes our high school a 4A high school, so we're competing in the biggest, quote-unquote, best sports category, 4A. Camas High School has won tons of state awards for sports. Football, they're always at the top, but they also do very well in track and volleyball, basketball, so you can rest assured that your child is going to get a great education, and if they're athletic, they're going to have a lot of opportunities here. Which leads me to my final pro of living in Camas in 2025, and that is high community involvement. This is one that's hard to quantify, but it's more based off of a feeling, and I would say most people feel this way about Camas if you went and surveyed, residents of Camas. Our downtown Camas is very alive and well, and that's in big part thanks to the Downtown Camas Association. They're very active in putting on events and getting that community involvement. They have a lot of backing behind them, a lot of community support. I would say overall our schools are very well funded, and there's a lot of parents that will volunteer in our schools, so we'd love to see high parent and family involvement in schools. We know that's one of the things that makes a community strong. We just recently had Camas Days in the summer, and that is our town's community festival. I think that every town should have a community festival. It brings people together and it really just sparks joy. And we have local governments that have a lot of high involvement as well. Although I don't like getting involved in local government myself, it is important that people are engaged in that and making better changes for their community. Now let's talk about the cons of living in Camas, Washington, because there are a couple things that you need to know. No place is perfect, and Camas is definitely not an exception to that rule. My first big con that comes to mind is how expensive it is to live in Camas, and this particularly relates to housing because that's most families' biggest expense. I pulled some numbers for you guys just the other day. It's fresh from our MLS, so here's what I've got for you. This is detached single-family home prices, so you own the land and the 4 walls of your home and everything on it, for the last 3 months in 2025. In Clark County, that median price is $598. It's actually pretty high. It's the highest in a long time that I've seen. $598, it's almost $600,000 for the median single-family home in our county. Now in Camas, that number is $831. That's almost 50% higher than the county median. That's kind of a big deal, because theoretically you need to make 50% more, and it's hard to make 50% more than the median income. So you do have to keep in mind that to get the same home in Camas, you're going to pay a lot more for it. And it's because of all those amazing things I just listed: the schools, the nature, the community feel, the openness, the closeness to everything. Another big con that you should definitely know about if you're moving to Camas is that the mill is still in operation. The mill used to smell really bad, say up to maybe about 15 years ago. Since then, they've really dialed back their production and they no longer produce paper there on a high scale. So if you hear someone say that Camas smells bad, that's not true anymore. Camas smells absolutely fine. But the reality is that mill has been operating since the 1800s, long before we had an EPA, before we had any environmental regulations. And so we really have no idea what's under the soil on that site, that Georgia Pacific site, and it's probably really nasty stuff. We all know that the mill is not going to be there forever. That real estate is worth so much, and paper production is just waning, right? It's not something that the world needs on a high scale anymore necessarily. And there's a lot of community pressure for that mill to get cleaned up and go away. There is no drop dead date right now. Georgia Pacific still owns that land. They still own the plant. But eventually it is going to go away. Now, when it does go away, who knows how much it's going to cost? There have just been estimates thrown out, but I can only imagine it's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars with how much contamination there is, and it could be potentially multiple decades before it's done. Another big con you need to know about moving to Camas is that there's been an issue with one of their wells for the public water system. The city of Camas just sent out a notice to Camas residents recently, summer 2025, about the fact that they had to turn well 13, the contaminated well over by the mill, back on, and it's still above the legal threshold or the safe threshold for PFAS, which is like those forever chemicals that you hear about. And so they let people know that they turn that well back on for the summer because otherwise they would not have enough water for everyone, and that they will be turning it off again in the fall when they do not need that water supply, but it is something to be aware of. We will link the official statement from the city down below so you can read it for yourself. The final big con I want to touch on is that sometimes people feel Camas can be a little bit exclusive feeling. I think that this kind of comes with the territory of being the most expensive, the most sought after city in any particular area. It just kind of is by default exclusive feeling. But I would say I talk to a lot of people in Camas. We knock on their doors, we're out talking to community members, we're doing videos, and people in Camas are overwhelmingly very kind, very accepting, and very willing to talk with you. They feel very community oriented. So that hasn't been my experience, but just know that some people do feel that way. That's all I got for you guys today for pros and cons of moving to Camas, Washington in 2025. Really hope this video was helpful to you. Drop down below in the comments what your pros and cons of Camas are. And of course, if you need help professionally selling or buying a home in Camas, Vancouver, or Clark County, Washington, my team at Dubyne Realtor Group, we'd love to serve you. Our contact information is down below, and we can't wait to see you guys again soon. Bye.